Hey, this is Dirk Nowitzki, and you're listening to the Mavs Step Back podcast.
I like this, TK. I like that. Yeah, it's the Mavericks, all about action. Don't do no acting, no Samuel Jackson. Dirk get the ball, you know that it's magic. Post move deadly, yeah, get tragic. Look with the ball, yeah, get nasty. He'll drop 30, don't gotta ask him. Got Chris Stapps, coach at the Adam. I spaz like Dallas, I thought I'm rapping. God, if Luka shoot the ball, you know that it's cash. But my boy still living the past. Now he got my boy Chris Stapps, looking like Dirk and Nash in the gap. They just want a ring, wanna fill the gap on your team head. I ain't talking hats, dang, go relax. Still at the champs, defense still coming with the best flow. The Mavs the best on the
All right, everybody, welcome into another edition of the Mavs Step Back. I'm your host, Dalton Trigg. I'm joined as always by my co-host and Sports Illustrated Dallas basketball colleague, Matt Galatson. We've got a return guest. Our buddy Skin Wade is with us. Skin, how are you doing tonight?
Gentlemen, I am doing fantastic. Things are good when the Mavericks are good, and I think we have a good team this year, boys.
Absolutely. They had a huge win in Denver. It's always a tough place to play. I don't know about y'all, but every time the Mavs play in Denver, even before the Nuggets, were good, became good again, every time they play in Denver, I get just really weird vibes when they play up there. And it's probably the altitude, and it's tougher for players to play up there. But for 3 quarters, it was a really weird vibe, and then they got things going in the fourth. And if you would have told me before that game that Luka was going to score 12 points, KP was going to score 10, and they were still going to win that game, I would have had a hard time believing that. But it was just a great team effort.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that game last night underscored is that this is a really good basketball team. We have spent so much time focusing on those other 2 guys, and even when those other 2 guys aren't playing well, they still matter in such a big way that other guys can thrive. But with all this conversation about, well, who's their third best player, I think what we're kind of seeing through 4 games is who cares, right? There's a lot of really good players on this team that all have different roles, that all play well off of each other, that's only going to get better and further cemented as the season goes on. So, I mean, it's really encouraging when you step back and go, man, they were one questionable referee challenge away from being 4-0.
Exactly.
So this has been a great start for sure.
Yeah, and the one thing that really stuck out to me, Luka, I'm not going to say that was his worst game, but it was probably up there for whatever reasons. He just didn't seem to have it. But, watching Jalen Brunson take over the way he did, leading that second unit and getting them back in the game, and their first lead, well, they went up on a Powell free throw at the very beginning, but then they lost the lead, and then the next time they took the lead was in the second quarter. And Jalen Brunson got a rebound. He was going down court, and he threw an absolutely beautiful bounce pass to Justin Jackson in transition that put him up by 2. And, when I see stuff like that, it just gets me really excited. And, I mean, I'm already a big Justin Jackson guy, but I've been really high on Brunson too. And, I mean, year 1 to year 2, he looks like he's really improved. He took advantage of his opportunity when Barea went down last year and seems to have held on to, those minutes. And I'm curious to get your thoughts, Skin, and then I'll get Matt in here too. But, I mean, how big do you think Brunson's going to be for this team this year from what you've seen so far through 4 games?
Well, I thought that, first of all, he's been great. And I know a lot of the talk was that, Brunson's had a great summer. And I think, your Twitter-focused, cynical sports fan is like, well, what the hell does that mean, Well, what happens is these guys get together in late August and September, especially now you look at how international team like the Mavericks, is they go off in all these different directions and get back together, and they're playing together. And so the people that were saying Jalen had a great summer are his teammates and the coaches. Because like, for example, all the talk about the trip to Miami, a lot of the coaches went and watched all that.
Right.
So that talk wasn't manufactured by some PR firm. That was guys that were there seeing him, and they're very high on him. And I think through a week and a half or whatever, however we've been here. I guess it's just been a week now. We've seen that. And so that's a positive. And, that growth is very apparent. With Luka, so much going through him, I think that you look at Jalen, and I think the stretches where you've seen DeLon, mostly in transition, they have three really, really good one exceptional playmaker, and then two really good playmakers to go along with him. And I think during his stint here before, there's times where Seth can operate effectively in a pick and roll. So now, and then we haven't even mentioned JJ yet, who will be utilized at some point this season as he continues to work back from the Achilles issue. So playmaking is not an issue. They've got a lot of it. And even if one of those guys goes down, they still have a lot of it. So I think that's a really great development that, I think last night on the postgame show, I called it understated excellence.
Right.
There's, he doesn't jump off the screen at you, but he just consistently makes play after play after play that are winning plays and that fuel runs and those kinds of things. So very early on in the year, it's exciting what we've seen from Jalen Brunson.
Matt, what did you think about that game last night as far as how the Mavs won? And, I mean, what are some of your early thoughts from this 3-1 start?
Well, I mean, just building off of what Skin said about Jalen Brunson, I mean, I'm just looking at his stat line here. 8 assists, no turnovers, 11 points, 4 of 8. I mean, that's super efficient. And, when he gets involved and DeLon gets involved and all the playmakers get involved, it makes things a lot easier for guys like Tim Hardaway Jr. Like, I mean, he was 4 of 6 from 3 last night. He was plus 23. He had 14 points. Like, there was a lot of talk over the summer about, like, there was a lot of, I guess, discontent about Tim Hardaway Jr. perhaps being a starter or whatever, with the, on social media and all that stuff. And you can see that when he doesn't have to, take things into his own hands and create his own shot all the time, he can be an efficient player. He just needs the playmakers around him, and that's been huge for him already, early in the season. And it really says a lot about the team, going back to just the win overall, that 9 guys in double figures. How many times have we seen even 5 or 6 guys in double figures for the Mavericks? It didn't happen very often the last couple of years, and to have 9 guys do it.
Yeah, and I think
that's crazy.
If I remember correctly too, I think I saw that Mavs PR tweeted out that was the first time that had happened since like 1986, I believe. So
I mean, I was sitting there last night going, all right, can I name those 9 guys? Because I was like 15 when that happened. I'm going, all right, we got Aguirre and Harp and Rowe and Brad Davis and Sam Perkins. And I mean, even like if you remember those teams well, you're sitting there after 6 or 7 going, who the hell else had double figures? Dale Ellis, my God. So it was extraordinary, and they had to have it because their 2 main guns didn't have it last night. But I want to throw something out there right quick. That I was thinking about as Matt was breaking down the Tim Hardaway Jr. scenario, because nobody talked about him over the summer unless they were talking about him as trade ballast, right?
Right.
Well, if they can get rid of him, the interesting thing about Tim Hardaway Jr. is if you just pull up Basketball Reference, he is an inefficient player. But one of the things about a quote-unquote inefficient player, you have instincts, you have ability, and you have situations. And so Tim Hardaway Jr., if we're just evaluating a basketball player, has all the tools to be a really good basketball player. He also, I put a lot of stock in these guys that have family members that have been in the league. Like even DeLon Wright's older brother played with the Heat. We know about Jalen's dad. We know about Seth's family. And so those things matter. So Tim Hardaway Jr.'s dad was a phenomenal player. I mean, that guy was freaking incredible. Had the most incredible crossover dribble you've ever seen. And so he knows what good basketball is. Not just because his dad did that doesn't mean he can do it, but the whole point is that he knows what good basketball is. If you go and look at his numbers, they're really bad and they're really inefficient when he's on crappy teams. Show me the guy who played on the Knicks the last couple of years that's putting up super efficient numbers. I mean,
Right.
I remember when Monte Ellis came here, and because I've been doing this so long, I have a lot of friends that work at national publications and stuff. And I was, really excited that we got Monte for the money we got him. And I'm tweeting about it, and they're sending me DMs like, "Bro, you are on crack. Have you not seen this guy? This guy is so inefficient." And I'm like, I don't think you guys understand what happens when you come off a Dirk screen. When you come off a Dirk screen, your life is different. Your options are different. The situation is different. And I'll be damned if you don't go back and look December of that year. You can go find 5 or 6 national articles about the reinvention of Monte Ellis and Monte's changed and all this crap. I'm like, Monte hasn't changed. Monte's playing with Dirk. All right. You don't have to become a different person. Your basketball opportunities are different because you're playing with excellence. And so Tim Hardaway Jr. is in a different situation. The closest he's been to this is when he was on a pretty good Atlanta team. But he is in a different basketball situation. So Tim Hardaway Jr. doesn't have to jack up bad shots with poor spacing when 3 seconds on the clock. He's a dynamic offensive player. There's going to be times where he takes bad shots, and we've already seen it in 4 games because, guys that score in bunches and gunners, they put up bad shots. But it's not detrimental to the team. He's not operating outside of an offense and going rogue. He's a talented player. He's got the right size. He's got the ability to score, and he's also accepting what his role is, and I think he's going to be a really good player for the team this year.
Yeah, and he's arguably the Mavs' best athlete. I mean, it's probably between him and Dwight Powell. But, he's arguably their best athlete. To your Monte point, I mean, the same could be said for Vince Carter when he arrived. Same situation. He played with Dirk and played with Carlisle, and that really, changed the end of his career, in my opinion. So, I mean, I like having him on the team as a guy that, and I mean, my personal preference, I like him coming off the bench more because I think, we have a lot of capable guys coming off the bench, but sometimes it can get a little stagnant. And I think having a guy like that can put up numbers as quickly as he can, I think he could, be a really good spark plug off that bench. So, and just talking a little bit more about DeLon Wright here, Skin, I know you were really, really big on that sign and trade over the summer, and I mean, you tried to tell people how good of a signing this was going to be, and sure enough, I mean, through 4 games, he looks extremely good. He's averaging 11 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. He's got a 4-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. I mean, he's been really good, and he's averaging 2 steals per game in 25 minutes. So I mean, he's all over the place, and he seems like exactly the kind of player you want to have next to Luka. But I mean, you knew this was a good signing from the beginning, but I mean, how has he lived up to your expectations so far?
He's been what I had hoped he was going to be, and he's had moments where he's exceeded that. And I think, there's still just this gigantic feeling out period where, as I was looking at the lineups last night, for example, I was really surprised that he didn't start instead of Dorian. Because if you look at those 3 perimeter players for Denver, they're 6'5" guys. And I thought DeLon was a better matchup. But I think DeLon's enjoying coming off the bench right now because he's being used in a playmaking situation, and it's helping him get into the flow. We'll see how it all shakes out, and I think we'll continue to see different starting lineups, but he fits a role. And if you look at it, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think he's 4 for 6 or 5 for 7 from 3 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
He's not going to shoot a bunch of threes, but he's going to shoot good threes. And when he's not shooting threes, he's going to get steals, and he's going to push the ball in transition, and he's going to rebound, and he's going to cover multiple different players. And there was a great moment last night where Porzingis had the ball kind of in the high post, And as soon as he caught the ball with his back to the basket, DeLon Wright's man left him from the corner, so DeLon cuts baseline and Porzingis finds him. He knows when to cut. You know, when we had Sean Marion here, different player, but he was excellent at knowing when to cut. Josh Howard used to be really good at knowing when to cut, and DeLon's got that ability. And he's also got the ability to rebound and push the ball and really create transition and early offense stuff. So he's been what I had hoped, and quite honestly, probably early on has exceeded it a little bit. And I think we now kind of see the vision. And I get, you know, being disappointed when things don't kind of materialize the way you had dreamt they were going to materialize at the moment. But I would hope that people that have watched this team for an extended period of time know that for the vast majority of situations, and for the most part, Donnie knows what he's doing. He's not a dumbass. He's not just signing guys for no reason. He's always got reasons for it. He always has vision for things. He doesn't operate in a vacuum. He works with Rick and the analytics guys and Cuban. But the guy knows what he's doing. And so I think the immediate overreaction 3 days into free agency, people should know by now, these guys know what they're doing. If you look at where this team was 2 years ago and where they are now, good God, that is some really great front office work.
Yeah, and while you were talking about the line a little bit there, I looked up the numbers here, but so far through 4 games, he's played 100 minutes. He's gone 17 of 26 from the field, so he's shooting 65%, and he's hit 3 of 5 threes. So if you could get him to hit a couple more threes, and I mean, there's times where he's open and he seems a little bit hesitant, and I think, you know, the more comfortable he gets playing with these guys, I think that'll change as the season progresses. But like I said, you just have to love what you've seen from him so far. And, I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better start. I mean, I guess, like you said, it could be 4-0 for the Mavs, but, I mean, they're 3-1, first time that's happened since the 2014-15 season. And they got the Lakers coming up this weekend. It's a nationally televised game on ESPN. The Lakers are 3-1 as well, I believe. And Skin, I mean, what are you envisioning for that game, and what do you think their chances are of, you know, going 4-1?
I like their chances for the simple fact that I think the Lakers are trying to figure out who the hell they are, and I'm doing this off the top of my head, but I believe they've won games against Memphis and Charlotte, and they did not look good. They had great stretches, but they didn't look good overall against the Clippers, in my opinion. Especially in those late-game situations, man, their spacing sucked.
Yeah.
So I think they're trying to figure out who they are. Danny Green was obviously a huge signing for them, and I know Mav fans wanted him. I definitely wanted him. He would have been great here. But I think this is a good time to catch him because I don't think they know who they are yet. And it is so weird to me that they're playing so much LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee, and Frank Vogel's like, where's my Roy Hibbert, I guess. I don't know. But that is that's certainly a little, and maybe it has to do with Rondo being out. I'm not sure. But I like getting them now. I like it because I think they're going to be damn near unbeatable by the end of the year. But I go into games now like, dudes, they won at Denver last night.
Yeah.
And I thought Denver was going to be the number 1 or number 2 seed in the West. Not the best team, but record-wise. And so you telling me that they went to Denver and won on the road with their 2 best players scoring under 30 points combined, that's a great win. So I think your expectations going into the Laker game should be, oh, yeah, Mavericks are a playoff caliber team playing at home. Lakers aren't the Lakers yet. So I expect to get a win on Friday night, or at least I expect to have a really competitive game and a chance to put yourself in a position to win that game. I'm not intimidated by the Lakers.
Yeah, and I think you have a couple things working for you, too. One, you know, like you said, you're back at home. 2, I don't think that Luka and KP are going to have back-to-back games like, you know, I don't think they're going to have a second consecutive game like they did in Denver. And I saw that Kyle Kuzma is going to be back for the Lakers, so they'll be working him in. You kind of saw how the Mavs, when, you know, Dwight Powell, that was his debut against the Nuggets. And, I mean, he did okay coming back, but you could tell it just kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? kind of jumbled them up a little bit. They were kind of out of sorts in that first half, and I don't even think he played in the second half. So I think all of those things factoring in, I'm pretty optimistic about it. And then, I mean, when you look at the Mavs schedule, going forward from that Lakers game, it's really not that hard. I mean, they play at Cleveland after the Lakers game. Then they've got Orlando. They play the Knicks at home. They play at Memphis. Then they go to Boston. And then after that, it's KP's return to New York. So, I mean, they've got a really good chance to stack up some wins here early on. Matt?
Is it okay? Wait, is it okay before Matt jumps in here? Is it too horrific to go? I'll be disappointed if they lose more than 2 games in that stretch.
No, I mean, I'm right there with you. I'm very optimistic about, where they could be after the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7 more games. So let's see. 9, that'd be 12-3. Yeah, that's about what I'm expecting. And that would be that would be amazing.
Matt, isn't it clear that me and Dalton are the biggest homers in town?
I mean, it's a little close. I think Dalton has a slight edge on you. I got him that Irrational Confidence Guy T-shirt a while back, but
that's a nice gift.
But this season is really it's definitely exceeding my expectations. I mean, I didn't buy a lot of the hype over the summer. I mean, you guys follow me on Twitter. I was disappointed with what happened. As a lot of people were, but I've been pleasantly surprised by a lot of these guys. And one of the things we talked about over the summer was the beginning schedule, because the beginning schedule, for the first, I can't remember if it was 18 or 20 games, was, it was, I don't want to say easy, but it was a gift, when we saw that. It was, oh my God, we actually have a chance to get off to a really good start here. And because it in the second half of the season, it gets a lot tougher. So they need to take advantage of it, and they've done it so far. Last year there was, I can't tell you how many games that that they should have had, and they didn't end up getting because there was a lot of imbalance and different things going on and whatever. It doesn't matter anymore. But it looks like when a team like this has a way of overcoming adversity when their best players aren't playing well, that's a special team. So the fact that they did what they did against Denver and how they almost, and what happened with Portland, even though they were playing a team that was in the Western Conference Finals and they had the Western Conference Finals experience, that was going up against a couple of 2 young stars and Luka and KP, they went, blow for blow with those guys. So I'm really excited. Y'all are picking 12-3 over the next few games. I might go 13-2. I might beat y'all on that because I really like what I've seen so far. And if their best players aren't playing well and they're still doing those kinds of things, who can't they beat?
Right.
Man, that is the Balcones talking, and I like it. I say drink more of that. Hey, so you're bringing up this concept that I think really, really matters for this team about why we can kind of look a little deeper at last night's win with KP. And by the way, KP rebounded his ass off, and
yes.
And Luka still they create issues, even when they're not scoring with spacing and things like that. But there was a moment in the first home game that just really stood out to me. Do you guys remember? Because I don't know if this made it onto the broadcast or not. Do you guys remember when Tim Hardaway Jr. challenged, I think it was Bradley Beal's shot, and he went down and he turned his ankle?
Yes.
Okay. So he turns his ankle, and he's laying on the floor, and the first person that was down there to help him up was Luka, who had been on the bench and he had put all his sweats back on. He beat down the guys that were on the floor. He beat Casey. He beat any of the trainers. He ran down there, even though he was out of the game in sweats, to check on Tim Hardaway Jr. And I know, like, a lot of people think, all right, you're overrating that thing. I'm not. I'm telling you, when you see sitting next to Derek Harper 40 times a year at least has really opened my eyes to paying attention to guys on the bench, how they interact with one another. you can find out so much about a team watching them during a timeout.
Right.
And that is an example of, those guys went to Miami, the way they talk about one another, the way they vibe. I mean, you see the pictures before the game where there is a togetherness there. And part of it is, their future is bright and they're the same age for the most part. And the old guy is Barea, and Barea's got a great relationship with Luka and Porzingis, and they speak Spanish together, and they look at Barea with respect and reverence. And, of course, then the next most tenured Mav is Dwight Powell, who is probably about as great a human as you'll find walking the planet Earth. I mean, he is freaking unbelievable, just as a person, caliber of character and those things.
And don't forget about Boban too. I mean, he's
oh my God, that's no, you're right. So think about Luka and Salah's relationship. It was really good, right?
Yes.
The problem with Salah, who I really liked being here, and I think had a good role, is that when Salah didn't play, you could feel his negative energy because he wanted to be in there and he was disappointment, and you could feel his disappointment. It was tangible. It was palpable. You will never feel Boban's disappointment because he doesn't let it infiltrate the locker room. He knows what his role is. He's comfortable with his role. And if he doesn't play, he will not pout or be unhappy. I'm not saying that is a bad thing about Salah. It's not. Guys that want to compete, they want to be in. But there's ways to go about those things. And when we signed Boban, I talked about this on the Ben and Skin show, and we got a lot of cynical texts and shut up you Homer and all this stuff. But that stuff matters. When you have to spend every working day around a negative person, that negative energy affects you. And so when the people around you are all pulling together, no matter what their role is, that matters. And so when we signed Boban, there was a guy in the organization that called him a locker room stud. And I had never heard that phrase before. But what was very evident is the Mavericks were saying, we acquired a guy that serves a role. It's a small role, but man, the intangible part of his character and his energy is going to be felt all throughout the locker room. And so all of those things work together. And so what happens is everyone pulls in the same direction. Everyone believes in one another. And so when people on the outside go, oh my God, Luka and Porzingis had less than 30 points combined, there's no way they win that game. That's not the way that the people in the locker room feel, because they feel like they're all one team, that they're all trying to do something together and believing in one another. And I know that this sounds hokey and corny in some of those things, but just my experience in being around teams is that stuff absolutely matters. And I think we saw it last night in the Denver game.
Yeah, and I mean, like we've been talking about when we found out about the Miami trip, we were glad to see that happening before training camp because obviously you want to get a head start. There's so many new guys coming together. You want to see them start to build chemistry as quickly as possible. And then, so I mean, we kind of got the good vibes going early there, and then Skin, I don't know if you saw, but we had Mark Cuban on a few weeks ago, and he reiterated that everybody on this team loves each other, and that's great, and that was going to be, that was going to make a big difference, and that was right before the season started, and now here the Mavs are 3-1, and you can definitely see it on the court. And another encouraging sign early on, it's only 4 games, but they've won both of their road games. And, last season they went 9-32 on the road. So, I mean, if you could just go, 500 on your road games, or, even if it's a little bit under that and you play good at home, I mean, that's probably going to get you into the playoffs. So,
yeah, I would agree with that.
That's a good thing to see early. Matt, you have any other thoughts on this opening stretch?
Well, it's just another thing about continuity to me is through the first 3 games, I mean, so you would argue that the Denver game, that was probably the worst game they've played out of the 4 games, and they still won it, right? So the fact that they haven't had Dwight Powell and they still have played that well over the first 3 games, I think speaks a lot, because once he gets into the lineup and starts doing his roll into the rim and all the different things that he does to, with his energy and getting to the basket and whatnot, that's just going to open up so much more for everybody else, because Maxi can roll, He's done it a few times and it's pretty effective. But Dwight is probably, he's one of the 5 best rim runners in the NBA. That's at least my opinion. So when you put that with this, and helps space all the other guys out with Luka and KP shooting and Curry and whatever, the offense is only going to get better from here as Dwight starts to play more. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think that he's kind of this last key that's gonna turn and unlock something else in the offense, and we could start seeing some really, really special nights.
Yeah, and through 4 games, we've had 4 different starting lineups now, and I wrote a piece for MavsSI.com earlier this week, and just from what we've seen so far, in my opinion, my ideal starting lineup, just from what we've seen, would be Luka, Seth Curry, DeLon Wright, KP, and Dwight Powell, once he's back to 100%. To me, that would be the ideal starting lineup at this point. Now, I know, Rick, he's depending on matchups, he might continue shuffling it, but as far as consistency and getting off to good starts, I feel like that's going to be their best bet going forward. I don't know. Skin, what do you think about starting lineups?
Yeah, I like that too. And obviously, there's going to be different matchups where you would change it. Here's I am a huge Dwight Powell fan. And, I think even just go back and watch the first minute and a half of that game last night and look at the floor, and just you can see the benefit of Dwight Powell being on the team. And obviously his energy is relentless. But I don't know how you keep Maxi Kleber off the floor in important situations. He is far and away our best all-around defensive player, and I quite frankly don't even think it's close. I think Dorian's in the conversation. I think DeLon's in the conversation. Maxi Kleber had a game-saving block last night. Yeah. Maxi Kleber had 3 blocks. Maxi Kleber keeps guards in front of him. Maxi Kleber is a bad man, and we all know the incredible value of Dwight Powell. But, man, in those tough situations, if he's 100% healthy, it's really hard for me personally to keep Maxi Kleber off the floor. That guy does a lot for this team.
Yeah, he's really good. And that Denver game, you look at the performances from DeLon Wright, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Maxi Kleber, all those contracts are looking very, very good for the Mavs right now.
God, no doubt.
So, everything.
I actually have a question for Skin here going off of that. So what would you do then? What would you do down the stretch? What is your clutch lineup? Because you're sacrificing offense for defense there with Powell and Maxi, and there's give and take, but what would you do in that situation?
I personally think it's going to depend on who's playing well that night, and I'm not trying to give you a cop-out answer. It's going to depend on who's playing well that night. It's going to depend on who is healthiest that night. It's going to depend on a foul situation, right? If one of those guys has 4 fouls and the other guys has 5 fouls, I think that matters. But my opinion, and I think it's negligible, but my opinion is that what Maxi gives you on defense as an all-around defender is he gives you more as a defender than Dwight gives you as an offensive player, if that makes sense. The difference in Maxi and Dwight offensively is less than the difference in Maxi and Dwight defensively.
Right.
And so I think when you're trying to sit there and figure out this – now, if the other team – Here's another interesting thing. If the other team is okay, think about Denver with Paul Millsap as their 4, right? Who do you guys think is better to cover Paul Millsap, Maxi or Dwight?
Maxi.
I agree.
Yeah.
And think about those moments last night where Paul Millsap killed you with untimely offensive rebounds. And I also think that there's a chance that Rick would look at that and go, I'm playing Dorian at the 4. So a lot of it is going to come down to, what is that other lineup out there? Because I think there's a lot of times where, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's some times where actually Porzingis is on the bench for critical possessions down the game, because they do want the defensive presence out there, although Porzingis is a great shot blocker. But there's going to be some tough decisions to be made based on what the other team is rolling out and going, okay, what's my best offensive lineup? I need to have Porzingis out there. And guys, we haven't seen Porzingis yet healthy. And by healthy, I mean with his legs under him and his wind and all those things.
Right.
The Kristaps Porzingis we are going to see in 3 weeks. We're going to compare that to the Kristaps Porzingis we've seen in these first 4 games and go, holy S, that guy's a monster.
I absolutely agree with that. I mean, that's the thing. He's already been so good, as is right now, and even when he's not scoring or he's not being efficient, he's doing a lot of little things. Like, even if he doesn't get credited with 5 blocks per game, he's challenging and, making people miss shots just with his length. So he may not be credited with the blocks, but there's at least 5-6 shots a game that he's altering. And just touching on Maxi real quick, and then we'll move on to our next topic here. But the thing that stands out with Maxi, he's always going to be a great shot blocker, but his rebounding has almost doubled from last year through 4 games. And, I mean, we'll see if he can keep it up through the rest of the season. He's playing 7 more minutes per game. But that's been the biggest thing to me. He's averaging 8 rebounds a game right now. And for a team, coming into this season, that was going to be one of their biggest weaknesses. They've held their own there. And it's been a team effort, and it's been great to see from him so far.
That was a really big thing about the DeLon Wright signing too, is that you can roll out a lineup that's the best rebounding backcourt in the NBA outside of Russ and Harden if you want to go Luka and DeLon Wright.
Right.
And I think Dorian Finney-Smith is a fantastic rebounder. And Kristaps is big enough to be an effective rebounder. He was an effective rebounder last night. And so they can put lineups out there to where rebounding will not be as big of an issue as I was thinking it was going to be going into the year initially. I agree with all that.
Well, one thing's for sure. I mean, everything's good in Mavs land right now. There's a lot of excitement. There was a lot of hype before the season. After this opening stretch, I mean, that's even more so now. And I can't wait to see what they can do against the Lakers on national TV this Friday. But, Skin, we're going to go into our last topic here. It's not basketball related, but we know you and Ben have started a brewery. Rollertown Beerworks.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've got to get this, this startup story. We've got to get the details on how this came about and, where you guys are at right now. And I mean, what can we expect from all this?
Okay, I'm so happy that you asked me about this because I love talking about this because I'm so freaking excited about this. This has been in the works for about, I don't know, I guess a year and a half now. And it's a bunch of different forces coming together. It's me and Ben, and then it's some really great guys that are from the Salina, Frisco area, like 5 generations of being in that area, that they had the building and they have a construction company. And then there's also a marketing component of this, which is actually Ben's brother and Ben's sister-in-law, Angela and Jonathan, are really brilliant people. And we've all come together and we've been working towards this, and we're going to open our doors in January. And we're going to be right off of the downtown square in Salina. And eventually we're going to be in this 7,600 square foot cement building that's 100 years old. And back in the day when the railroad was coming through Texas, towns, if the railroad didn't come through your town, that was a problem. So Salina took their most important buildings and they put them on these rollers, and they used a steam engine to roll the town to the railroad.
Nice.
So that's why it's called Rollertown. And that building is right off the railroad. And we're in a temporary location right behind it so we can get beer out to the people. We're going to be opening the doors in January. And our head brewer is a total badass. It's a guy named Tommy Miller. And he's worked for some great breweries in town like Deep Ellum and Lakewood and Noble Ray. And I'm telling you, he's a monster. Like, I can say, hey, Tommy, we need something like this. He's like, oh, I got something for you. And he'll brew it up. He's like, holy mother, this guy's incredible. And so I don't want to give too much away, but I will say this. We do have a beer coming out when we open in January called the Big German.
Oh, man.
Oh, my.
All right? It is a golden, easy drinking Kolsch with minimal hops and a smooth finish. just like your favorite big German. And I'll tell you another thing. He is aware of this beer, and he loves the idea of it.
Man.
So we're going to have a beer that all Maverick fans are going to want to drink. I can promise you that. We're going to have a great selection. I am really, really proud of this. We've been putting a lot of work in on it. And when we open the doors in January, we want people to come on out to downtown Salina and drink our beer, and we'll drink it with you. And I can't frickin' wait. Thank you so much for asking me about that.
Definitely. I mean, it sounds really awesome. I know y'all have put a ton of work into it, and I can't wait for you guys to, see the results of that hard work. And I mean, we're definitely going to have to steal a couple of those hats from you too, because those things are nice.
Oh yeah. Trust me, man. We'll for sure hook you guys up. You guys have been down since day one, but we're proud of and this is where, Ben's really good at marketing, but his brother and his sister-in-law are just brilliant at it. And they're the reasons that we got involved with Balcones in the first place. They're the ones that, put us up on Balcones. And so I think probably in the not too distant future, we'll have some Balcones barrel-aged stouts coming your way. And we've got an incredible mango habanero saison that I'm proud of. We got some great IPA selections. I really truly can't wait for people to get to drink this beer. We've had some samples at the Salina Oktoberfest, and people were loving it. It was just such a great vibe, and it really just got us even more excited that we knew what we were doing and that this was going to be something that people were going to be willing to throw down with us. So I tell you what, we should have a big party at Rollertown. Maybe get all the local podcasts together, all the Mavs Reddit people together, and just do a big giant salute to the Mavs and imbibe together. I think it'd be a hell of a lot of fun.
Man, if we can make that work and we can do it, let's do it on a Saturday, and I will make it a point to drive out there and be at that. That sounds like a good time.
Come on with it. Let's do it, boys. Let's make it happen.
Matt, any other thoughts for Skin here before we let him go?
Well, I'm super excited about the brewery, obviously, because I'm a big beer guy. But, I wanted to tell you, Skin, obviously you're the ones that turned us on to Balcones, and I've been sending Dalton bottles in Mississippi. And I want you to know that I've also turned my dad and my brother onto it. So now my whole family is a Balcones family. And it's just, I've found places around town that have it, and I give it, I tell my friends to order it, and they love it. So it's you guys are true alcohol aficionados, and I'm just gonna trust your word from now on. Anything you say is good. I believe you, and I'm gonna go with it.
Man, I love hearing that. Now, I want to ask you what your favorite is, but before you tell me, I want to say something. So sometimes I can come off as a snob. I'm not proud of it, but it's the truth. And so when Jonathan was telling us about Balcones, I was like, man, I'm not crazy about the Texas whiskey scene. Maybe I'm being, I'm kind of a Kentucky bourbon guy, and I need my Blanton's or my Basil Hayden. And, sorry, I don't want to be snobby about this. And he was like, Jonathan's known me since I was 12, and he was, 8 or 9 or whatever. And so he was like, no problem. Let me tell you a little bit about it. And he started telling me the backstory of the company, the distillery, of the head distiller, Jared. And I was like, okay, I can really appreciate that ethos. I can get behind that. And then when I tried it, I was like, man, I should know by now. I'm an old man. I should know to judge something before I have it. And and now you guys know because you've had it. You know how truly exceptional it is. So you don't get too old to learn the same lessons over and over. I guess maybe that's just stubbornness. But what is so far? What is y'all's favorite?
Mine is the Rumble, and
oh, nice.
Yeah, and I'm not really picky, but you can ask Matt. Ever since I got that's pretty much all. That's pretty much all I want from now on.
That's kick-ass. What about you, Matt?
Well, so before I tell you that, I want you to know that I'm actually going to a bachelor party this weekend in Kentucky, and I'm going on a bourbon tour. So if you have any pointers, please let me know.
All right, here's what you need to do. What you need to do. Have you had many conversations with Scott Tomlin, head of Mavs PR?
No, but I need to.
All right, Scott Tomlin is an American badass. He went to the University of Kentucky, and he will give you great advice. I've had some fantastic whiskey conversations with Scott Tomlin. He's a great dude in general, but he knows his whiskey. So before you get out of town, shoot him an email, because I know you get Maverick emails. Shoot him an email and said, Skin said I should ask you where to go during my trip to Kentucky, and you will be. He will give you so much good information.
Yeah, I met Scott. I met Scott in New Orleans last Friday. He is such a good dude.
He's a wonderful person.
Okay, but so right now I have 6 bottles of Balcones in my house.
Okay, what do you got?
I have the Pot Still Bourbon, which I just finished, and that's probably my favorite. Then True Blue is right up there as well. Those are probably my 2, big ones. And I have Rumble, and I have the single malt, and I tried the Brimstone, and that thing is just a flamethrower. So it's a little bit harder for me to drink. And then I have the Baby Blue as well. So I've got a pretty good lineup.
I want to tell you a super quick story, and I'm probably butchering this, but this will tell you about how amazing Ben's brother Jonathan is. And let me tell you, too, as badass as he is, his wife's twice as kick-ass. She's the baddest person in our crew. She's amazing. But when there was like kind of a quote-unquote bourbon trend, and so, Jared, the head distiller there, was a little averse to going along with the trends. And he's like, I don't want to make a bourbon just to follow the trends. They don't want to make something, they don't want to sell the most whiskey. They want to sell the best whiskey. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so Jonathan had this conversation with Jared, and he was like, wait a minute. He's like, you need to think back to when you were first getting into distilling, and you need to think about what you and your friends could afford and what you would drink. And so the idea was, man, make a bourbon that we can do at a nice price point that's not overly expensive, but is an excellent bourbon that you would have loved in your early days of exploring this to get at that price point. And that was the inspiration behind the Pot Still Bourbon. So the fact that you love it that much, I think, is awesome, because it was kind of Jonathan's, vision to, we need something like this because this is what our customers would want and this is what they would expect. And Jared, immediately got it. He connected with that idea, and he crafted the Pot Still Bourbon, and now you can attest just how great it is. So I love all the little stories that go behind it, and why, a distillery as great as Balcones, why they do the things that they do. Because you don't just make the beer or make the whiskey or make the vodka and just throw it out there. You got to, the thing that Balcones says, it's distilled to appreciate. And so what you want is, you want to make something that people can appreciate in a way beyond just, I just drank that, what's next? You want to have something that people are invested in and care about. That's what we want to do with Rollertown. That's what the Balcones people do. And, I think you guys are living, breathing, Balcones disciples, and you understand what's great about it. So I really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, and Skin, we always appreciate you coming on and talking Mavs with us, but we also love it because we can talk about this kind of stuff with you too, and we have a great time doing it. And we just want to thank you again for spending some time with us tonight talking about all this. And we hope you're ready to see how the Mavs do in this upcoming stretch. So again, just want to thank you, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right, sounds good, boys. Take care.
Thanks again.
All right, guys. Again, that was our good buddy Jeff Skin Wade. Always love having him on the pod. That dude has some really good basketball insight, and we always have fun talking about other things as well. Guys, be sure to subscribe on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Be sure to find us on YouTube. It's Mavs Step Back Podcasts on YouTube, and be sure to subscribe there. Subscribing automatically enters you for a chance to win 2 tickets to a Mavs game of your choice. We've got nearly 400 subscribers right now. The goal is 1,000, so we can start doing some YouTube live stuff. So as long as you're one of the first 1,000 subscribers, you're entered for a chance to win, 2 tickets to the game of your choice. So the sooner we get to 1,000, the sooner some lucky winner will get to win those tickets. So be sure to go there and subscribe. Guys, we appreciate it. We hope you have a great rest of the week. We hope you enjoy the Mavs-Lakers game on ESPN this Friday, and we will talk to you next week. Y'all have a good one.
A lot of times feel like I was on the road to nowhere. Tell me why all these people up in my face acting like I know them. Feeling like Luka Doncic, rookie of the year, I'm the coldest. God speaking through me every single track, prophet like Moses. Asking why I gotta wait till I'm dead to go and get my roses. Feeling like Mavs 2019, grinding unfocused. I used to go to bed at night discouraged, so hopeless. Went through the same pain, my friends chose drugs to cope with. Now I'm reading all these hating comments, man, it got me in motion. I had to whip up the potion, I ain't even with the boasting. I was just broken, way down to my lowest, getting swallowed by them locusts, letting God do the coaching. I had to go through a lot, just to realize that I'm chosen. Carry away, felt like boulders, all of those slams shut, had to bulldoze them. Name a rapper dude who can see me over wax. I'm just trying to spit the facts, way I spit my flow, people telling me relax. I just get it double back, They still asking for more and I gave them my last. Can't never seen it let go of the past, and that's sad. I just sit back and reflect. Oh my God, they really feeling the kid. Family calling on the phone, almost a star. Drew, look what you did. About to put silk right back on the grid. Go kill a beat, then go listen to Trig.